Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Padujana Randana Shodanandana Padujana Randana Yashodanandana Brajajana Randana Ranandana Padujana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Ashtoto the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajikacharya Ashtoto the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, starting chapter 6 and page 257. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 5th day of January 2021 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga. Text 1, page 257. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita Karma Palam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha Nanaragni Na Chakriyaha. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita Karma Palam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha Nanaragni Na Chakriyaha. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita Karma Palam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sasanyasi Cha Yogi Cha Nanaragni Na Chakriyaha. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Anashrita Karma Palam Karyam Karma Karoti Yaha Sasannyasi cha yogi cha Nananagni nachakriyaha. Word by words. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Lord said, Anashritaha, without taking shelter, karma palam, of the result of work. Karyam, obligatory, karma, work, karoti, performs. Yaha, one who, saha, he, sannyasi, in the renounced order. Cha, also, yogi, mystic. Cha, also, na, not, nihi, without, agnihi, fire, na, nor, cha, also, akriyaha, without duty. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Purport. In this chapter, the Lord explains that the process of the Eightfold Yoga system is a means to control the mind and the senses. However, this is very difficult for people in general to perform, especially in the age of Kali. Although the Eightfold Yoga system is recommended in this chapter, the Lord emphasizes that the process of karma yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness, is better. Everyone acts in this world to maintain his family and their paraphernalia, but no one is working without some self-interest, some personal gratification, be it concentrated or extended. The criterion of perfection is to act in Krishna consciousness, and not with a view to enjoying the fruits of work. To act in Krishna consciousness is the duty of every living entity because all are constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme. The parts of the body work for the satisfaction of the whole body. The limbs of the body do not act for self-satisfaction, but for the satisfaction of the complete whole. Similarly, the living entity who acts for satisfaction of the Supreme Whole and not for personal satisfaction is the perfect sannyasi, the perfect yogi. The sannyasis sometimes artificially think that they have become liberated from all material duties, and therefore they cease to perform Agnihotra yajnas, fire sacrifices. But actually they are self-interested because their goal is to become one with the impersonal Brahman. Such a desire is greater than any material desire, but it is not without self-interest. Similarly, the mystic yogi who practices the yoga system with half-open eyes, ceasing all material activities, desires some satisfaction for his personal self. But a person acting in Krishna consciousness works for the satisfaction of the whole, without self-interest. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for self-satisfaction. His criterion of success is the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is the perfect sannyasi or perfect yogi. Lord Chaitanya, the highest perfectional symbol of renunciation, prays in this way. Nadanang nadanang nasundarim. You want to try it? Okay. Nadanang nadanang nasundarim kavitam va jagadish kamaye. Mama janmani janmanishware bhavata bhakti dahaitu ki tvai. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. What I want only is the causeless mercy of your devotional service in my life, birth after birth. Om jnana timurandasya jnanandjana shalakaya chakshur unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we're embarking on this chapter entitled Dhyana Yoga, and Krishna will outline the Ashtanga Yoga process. I don't know if he goes through that. In the purports we'll hear this Eightfold principles, but he outlines them in this chapter, giving some practical instructions how to perform meditative yoga. And from the first purport here, we find a central theme that will come up. And that is that although Krishna is speaking about it here, and it is an authorized process to control the senses, control the mind, and fix it on the Supreme, and Krishna makes clear that the real object of meditation is Him, it's not practical or recommended in this age. And we'll find that even Arjuna rejects it. It's too difficult, he presents himself as a worldly man. He's a fighter. He's not a natural renunciant or yogi, and so he'll plead that his mind is too powerful, because the whole thing is the mind, basically. The mind is too restless. It's too powerful. It's difficult to control, more difficult to control than the wind. This comes up later. And Krishna will say, yes, that's true, but it's possible by practice. And what if I fail? Even if you fail, you'll come back in a family that you can continue like that. But in the final analysis, Krishna says, well, the best yogi of all is one who's always thinking of me. So Arjun's already doing that, so he's very encouraged. And then in the next chapter, Krishna describes from verse 1 how the mind can naturally be focused on me. Because it all comes back to that. Any yoga process will lead to that. And genuine yoga process will lead to unbroken remembrance of Krishna. Which, upon that basis, the whole Bhakti yoga process is also built. I was thinking as I was reading that, because we're going to be reading about this process of restraining the senses and focusing the mind and sitting and practicing pranayama, all for the sake of becoming more and more concentrated and finally achieving samadhi. So at the end of the Bhagavatam, there's this section. There happens to be 8 verses, and it's all about Krishna Katha, about hearing glorification of Krishna. It begins with the word Sankirtan. Sankirtyamano Bhagavan Ananta Shrutana Bhavo Vasanam Vipungsam Pravishya Chittam Vidanoti Shesham Hitata Moko Bhamivati Bhatha. So what he says there is the Sankirtyamano, congregational chanting, or chanting, about Bhagavan, the unlimited Lord. Shrutana Bhavo, practicing Shruta, hearing. Sankirtyamano Bhagavanananta Shanama Vyasanam Hipungsam Pravishya Chittam. Krishna enters into the heart of such a meditating devotee, such one who's absorbed in hearing about him. He's already there, but he manifests his influence. Vidanotya Shesham, and he cleanses away all abhadras, all inauspicious things in the heart. Just as the sun shining dissipates all the darkness, or a powerful wind will dissipate the fog. On the other hand, that those words that don't glorify the Lord are false and harmful and useless, like that. But then on the other side, Tadeva Ramyam Ruchidang Tadeva Satyam Taduhaiva Mangalam Tadeva Punyam Bhagavad Gunodiyam Tadeva Ramyam Ruchirang Navang Tadeva Shashwang Manaso Mahotsavam Tadeva Shokarna Vashoshananam Yadottama Shloka Yesho Nagiyate. Those words that spread the name and fame, Yasha, we sing that every morning in both of the songs that we sing about the Guru. Yasha is fame and glory, which glorify the Supreme Lord. Uttama Shloka, who is glorified in the best of shlokas, have all these qualities. They're true. Tadeva Satyam. They're very auspicious. They punya, just by hearing and chanting, you become pious. You accumulate pious credits. Tadeva Satyam, Tadohaiva Mangalam, Tadeva Punyam, Bhagavad Gunodiyam. Those words which cause the arousal of remembrance of Bhagavan's qualities. Tadeva Ramyam, very attractive, literally. Ruchidam, they have a certain taste to them because they're saturated with, they're not different from Krishna. Tadeva Satyam, Tadeva Ramyam Ruchidang Navang. Now this is very interesting. They're ever fresh. Meaning that the Bhagavad Gita, we can keep reading it and reading it and reading it somewhere, but we'll always find newer and newer things in it. If you read some material literature, it becomes hackneyed after some time. Short time. Navang. Tadeva Shashwang Manaso Mahotsavam. This is my favorite line. An eternal festival for the mind. Manaso Mahotsavam. Tadeva Shokarna Vashoshanam. It dries up the ocean of lamentation and grief. Shokarna Vashoshanam Yaduttama Shloki Shonagiyate. Then he goes back, and he says, on the other hand, this is a verse that's almost identical to a verse way back in the first canto where Narada Muni is instructing Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam, and why he should. And he more or less says that everything you wrote up till now, because it doesn't wholly and solely glorify Krishna and devotional service and the devotees and these incarnations and all the things we have in the Bhagavatam, is like a pilgrimage of crows. Wow, that includes Bhagavad Gita. I mean, it doesn't really, but he had written the Mahabharata and other Puranas, some of which have a lot about Bhakti, like the Padma Purana, but not wholly and solely. That's the point. So, he says, Nayad Vachas Chitta Badang, it could be very nicely written, very high literary qualities, but there's no Krishna Katha in there. Tadwangsha Tirtam, a place of pilgrimage for crows. What's the place of pilgrimage? There's probably millions of them out there, and where they have the big dumps. You know what I'm talking about. If you go on convoy, you know what I mean? That's a pilgrimage for crows. They love that, to go there. They can hang out there and get garbage, In other words, it's not very nice. The swan-like devotees, so you have two different birds. You have the crows and the swans. The crows go where the filthy things are, and the crow-like human beings, they like to hear and read stuff that's in the modes of nature and deals with material topics. But the swan-like devotees, Naduhangsa Sevitam, is not served or not frequented by the swan-like devotees. Naduhangsa Sevitam Yatrachutas Tatri Sadhavo Mala. Wherever Achyuta, Krishna, the infallible Lord, is being glorified, that's where the swan-like devotees like to congregate. You see what I'm saying? So he goes on like that. He quotes another verse from these verses from the 5th chapter, 1st canto. This is in the 12th canto, near the end of the book. And so finally, the reason I'm bringing it up, because this, what you're trying to achieve here by the yoga system is unbroken remembrance, meditation, samadhi, full absorption in thoughts of transcendence, however you want to define it. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Krishna. But you're trying to drag the mind away from matter and put it on spirit. So these verses end with these two verses that talk about that. So he says, what is it? Oh yeah, Yashakshiyam eva parishamak paro varnashvanacharita pakshutarishu avismati shridarapada padmayo gunanavara shavanararadibi. That the following very nicely your duties in varnashram, and that materially, but you're well situated in your varnashram system, and you're working very hard, hoping for improvement in your material sphere. Maybe I'll go to heaven, maybe I'll get a better birth, like that. So he said the best thing you can get from that is yasha and shriya, means fame and wealth of various kinds, which is ephemeral, which is material, and which eventually you lose. But on the other hand, you can get unbroken remembrance of the lotus feet of Sridhar. Sridhar is a name for Krishna, means the one who is possessor of all wealth, or Lakshmi. By doing what? Avismati Sridhar Gunanuvara Shravananararibi. By becoming absorbed and dedicated to hearing and chanting and remembering the qualities and forms and names of Krishna. Anuvara, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas. And then the last verse, he begins with this word, avismati. Avismati is an important word. It means no forgetfulness. It's one thing to remember, but then you may lose the remembrance. But once you're in the state of remembrance, not to forget, that means you're in samadhi. You see what I'm saying? So this word avismati appears twice, in the last, the 7th verse and the 8th verse of this Ashtaka. So here's the benefits now, finally, of coming to the point of being in meditation on Krishna. It can be dynamic. We don't have to sit. We can't sit for very long. But we can do our duties in relation to Krishna, if we're fully surrendered to Krishna. Whatever we do, from brushing our teeth, taking rest, taking prasadam, glorifying the deity, going out on Sankirtan, sweeping the floor, it can all be part of our duties in Krishna consciousness, which help us remember Krishna and become absorbed in thinking. So what's the benefit? Avismati Krishna Padada Vindayo. Now we're on the Krishna Padada. Unbroken remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet, which is achieved by hearing and chanting and the other process of devotional service. What's the benefit? Chinotya Badhrani. The first thing is, back to this point, destroys everything inauspicious. In other words, from the beginning, as soon as you're not fully remembering, but you're starting to remember Krishna, the abhadras are being cleansed away from the heart. And full remembrance, all the abhadras are gone. Chinoti, destroyed. Chinotya Badhrani, Shangtanoti. Sham is a word that you don't often hear. That's the Sanskrit word. It's part of, this word Shankara is very common. You may have heard that Shankar, like it's a name for Shiva, Lord Shiva. Like we have Shankaracharya, right? So Shankara means one who creates sham, good fortune, welfare. You see, So Chinotya Badhrani Shangtanoti. And it causes the flowering of your good fortune on spiritual level. In other words, it's very everything auspicious happens in your life from this constant remembrance of Krishna. So everything evil is destroyed, and all the good is poured upon you. Sattvasya Shuddhim, your whole being, your consciousness, your intelligence, your mind, your senses, your body, everything becomes purified because it's in the fire of Krishna consciousness. Sattvasya Shuddhim Paramatma Bhaktim. Devotional service to the Supreme Soul, who is Krishna. Obviously, he's mentioned in the first line of the verse. That's from the Krishna Padadabandya. Sattvasya Shuddhim Paramatma Bhaktim, characterized by, what is this bhakti characterized by? Jnanam, so Vijnana, Virakti, Jnanam to Vijnanam, Viragya Yuktam. Three things that are always there. Knowledge, realized knowledge. One is theoretical knowledge, you understand, but then you actually realize it. And then detachment from everything material. So that's coming from the process of bhakti yoga. The process of hearing and chanting, remembering, and serving, doing the puja, praying to, all of these 9 processes are the way that the bhakti yogi absorbs his mind in Krishna, a dynamic yoga. And it's practical. You can start from, the most degraded position in society. But if you're fortunate enough to meet someone who can inspire you to practice, and you're serious, then you can get purified and come to the point of constant remembrance of Krishna. Not the rarefied few who can possibly go off to the Himalayas and spend years wrestling with the mind, and meanwhile being distracted by all those cities that are coming your way. So we're taking our cue from Lord Chaitanya. We got that in the last in the verse here. Nadanang nadanang nasundirim. This is a part of the Shikshastika. What we don't want is all of these things, material things people generally want: wealth, followers, beautiful women, kabitang, high education. We just want Krishna's unmotivated devotional service, ahoitaki bhakti in life. And everything will be complete. Okay, so he's talking about sannyas, again, this will come up again in the 18th chapter, the perfection of sannyas. All right, let's go into 2. Yang sannyasamati prahu yogam tam vidhi pandava naya sannyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kashtana. What is called enunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Purport. Real sannyas yoga, or bhakti, means that one should know his constitutional position as the living entity and act accordingly. The living entity has no separate independent identity. He is the marginal energy of the Supreme. When he is entrapped by a material energy, he is conditioned, and when he is Krishna conscious or aware of the spiritual energy, then he is in his real and natural state of life. Therefore, when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification, or renounces all kinds of sense gratificatory activities. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from material attachment. But a person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and a yogi. The purpose of knowledge and of restraining the senses, as prescribed in the jnana and yoga processes, is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. If one is unable to give up the activities of his selfish nature, then jnana and yoga are of no avail. The real aim is for a living entity to give up all selfish satisfaction and to be prepared to satisfy the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for any kind of self-enjoyment. He is always engaged for the enjoyment of the Supreme. One who has no information of the Supreme must therefore be engaged in self-satisfaction, because no one can stand on the platform of inactivity. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. So, you can see how the final end of Krishna consciousness, which is prema, love for Krishna, completely embodies this mood, if you think about it. If you really love somebody, then you're taking pleasure in their pleasure. That's what makes you happy, to see they're happy. And if you can be instrumental in their being happy, then that's your relationship expression of love. It's like a mother's love for the child, the purest form of love we can find in this world. A little baby, what can the baby do for the mother? Basically nothing. It just causes a lot of, anxiety. Is the baby getting into trouble? Is the baby hungry? Why is the baby crying now? We just fed him. A lot of anxiety. But when the mother, can see that, the child is peaceful now. Oh my God, look, he's smiling at me. And that toothless smile, that's the mother's day is completely made. Take a picture, keep it in the file. So the happiness of the child is the happiness of the mother, isn't it? We all had our picture taken like that. I don't know, in my day, I don't think we had so many cameras, but nowadays everywhere. So that's the purest form, because it's totally selfless. So when we're attuned to Krishna in that way, and but it's hard because we can't see Krishna regularly. So therefore we need that intermediary of the spiritual master, who knows what's best for us, who's serving Krishna by bringing us closer to Krishna. And so his only desire is that we be Krishna conscious. So when we're doing something right, chanting nicely, doing our service, whatever it may be, and the spiritual master is pleased, we can know that Krishna is pleased, because he's completely in tune with what Krishna desires. He knows from Shastra, So that's why the spiritual master is essential. Because if we try to please Krishna, we don't know exactly. We may read the Shastra, but inevitably we'll misinterpret or do that. The Ardha Kukati Nyaya, you know what that is? This is something you can learn tonight. Ardha is half. Kukuti is a chicken, a hen. And Nyaya means logic, literally half hen logic. Have you heard this one before? Yeah. So, what's the logic? It's meant to deter us from picking and choosing what we want to, follow in the Shastra. And that's just a step toward getting rid of the Shastra, because you can't do that. It doesn't work. But you can try to do it, and that's perverse. So, Ardha Kukati Nyaya is you have this farmer, foolish farmer. He had a hen who was giving eggs very nicely, But he was thinking, I'm going to be a more successful businessman than my other farmer friends here, because I see that I have to feed this chicken, and then he gives eggs. The hen gives eggs. So that feed, that's a minus. I have to buy that and take trouble, So what I'll do is I'll cut off the head so he won't have to eat anymore, and I'll get the chickens without the feed. So he does that, and he gets nothing. The poor chicken is dead, doesn't give anything. So that's the problem with trying to pick and choose in the Shastra, is that it's all of a piece, and if we want success, we have to follow the Shastra according to how it's presented to us by the realized soul, the spiritual master. That's why the as it is on this Bhagavad Gita. And we can see Prabhupada's purports are essential here. Without the purports, we would be lost. And I know, because I read a Bhagavad Gita had no purports before I met with devotees, and it was interesting, but it didn't change my life. I had no idea what to do, It wasn't even presented, in such a way that it was you thought it was something that you were supposed to do afterward. It didn't have the potency. So Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita does have the potency, because in every purport he's trying to bring us and make us understand why Krishna consciousness is the perfect form of whatever kind of yoga we're reading. If it's karma yoga, yes, do your duties for Krishna and sacrifice for Krishna. And dhyana yoga, do everything that's necessary in order to help you remember Krishna, and that we'll see the successes there. But here the emphasis on sannyas, which is renunciation. But more important than renunciation, as I think I made clear in many places, is this vairagya, is detachment. Is that a sannyasi, he can have millions of dollars. Prabhupada had millions of dollars at his disposal, but none of it was being used for his sense gratification. He was printing books and building temples and doing other things. It requires money, and relying on Krishna to send more. Whatever he got, spend it on Krishna, And he was extremely successful. And that way is a perfect sannyasi. Millions of dollars passing through, but they're passing through, and when they're spending on is not for his own sense gratification, it's to please Krishna. And that pleasing of Krishna is the greatest pleasure. There's a line, I chanted this sometimes. I remember first reading, I said, this is it. Jiva Goswami defines the essence of bhakti, Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukhamata Swasukatvam. That's it. Should I repeat it? I'll give you a translation. So Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukhamata Swasukatvam. So Bhajaniya means the worshipable Lord, just like bhajan. Bhajaniya Padama Purusha, the supreme person, the supreme worshipable person. Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukha Matra, only the happiness. Matra means in many cases only, solely. Solely the happiness of the supreme worshipable person, Krishna, is your sole source of happiness for you. Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukha Matra Swasukatvam. Swasukha means your own happiness. Your own happiness is completely wrapped up in wholly and solely in the happiness of the supreme worshipable person, Krishna. That's the essence of bhakti. And the more that now oftentimes when we practice, we're not aware that that's going on. But what we're doing, we're chanting, that's giving pleasure to Krishna. But we're not so conscious that it's giving pleasure to Krishna. But still, it's working wonderfully. It's keeping us aloof from material attachment. And it's keeping us purifying in many ways we don't even know. Until you advance to the point of Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, where 75%, Prabhupada gave the figure, about 75% of the abhadras, the impurities, are cleansed away, and you become fixed. Your faith deepens, and your detachment from matter deepens. And you become less affected by the lower modes of nature. So let's go on. We did text 2, right? Yeah. Text 3. Aruruksho mane yogam karma karanam uchyate yogaruddhasya tasyaiva shamakaranam uchyate. For one who is a neophyte in the Eightfold Yoga system, work is said to be the means. And for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. Purport. The process of linking oneself with the Supreme is called yoga. It may be compared to a ladder for attaining the topmost spiritual realization. This ladder begins from the lowest material condition of the living entity and rises up to perfect self-realization in pure spiritual life. According to various elevations, different parts of the ladder are known by different names. But all in all, the complete ladder is called yoga and may be divided into 3 parts: Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The beginning of the ladder is called the Yogaruruksha stage, and the highest rung is called Yogarudha. Concerning the Eightfold Yoga system, attempts in the beginning to enter into meditation through regulative principles of life and practice of different sitting postures, which are more or less bodily exercises, are considered fruitive material activities. All such activities lead to achieving perfect mental equilibrium to control the senses. When one is accomplished in the practice of meditation, he ceases all disturbing mental activities. A Krishna-conscious person, however, is situated from the beginning on the platform of meditation because he always thinks of Krishna. And being constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, he is considered to have ceased all material activities. So, as I pointed out, Prabhupada's he always, in fact, in all these purports, he'll bring in the contrasting situation or the contrasting value of Krishna consciousness compared to this systematic yoga system. And we can see how, as Krishna will describe the actual principles of yoga, it seems pretty difficult. It's. I remember before I even heard of Krishna consciousness, I was practicing a little hatha yoga, and then after a while, I got to a studio where it was called Integral. So therefore, we did a little of everything, and part of it was meditation. After our pranayama and a little chanting, we did the meditation. And it was actually. It definitely pacifies the mind, and it's of course healthy for the body, and that's why it's so popular. But you can get completely hung up on that because there's a material motivation for everything. If you're a materialist, you're in the modes of nature, then everything that you are judging, is it good for me? Should I engage in it? Should I pay something for it? Is all on a material platform. What am I going to get out of it? And so yoga produces peace, a limber body, health, and so forth, and peace of mind is what people are looking for, and it can help with that. So that becomes the goal of yoga. But it's not. It's just a byproduct of some of the first stages of yoga. So therefore we need this description of the yoga ladder. What is that top rung on the ladder? And is it really feasible for me to achieve that by this yoga process? In the present, I can only give 20 minutes every other day to my yoga practice. Is that going to work? No. You have to have a yoga that you can practice all day, every day, and still lead your life. In other words, you have to keep body and soul together, but you have to still be in yoga. As soon as you get out of yoga, Maya comes in, and you run the risk of taking another birth, and you may not have such a nice situation. So Bhakti Yoga is practical because from the beginning you're practicing yoga, and everything that you're doing, it all depends on your sincerity, how fast you go, but everything that you're doing is moving you toward the final goal, which is freedom from birth and death, preliminarily, and return back home, back to Godhead. You won't find the yoga studios promising that. Okay. Text 4. Yadahi nendriyateshu na karma svanashajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yogarudas tadorchate. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when, having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Purport: when a person is fully engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is pleased in himself, and thus he is no longer engaged in sense gratification or in fruitive activities. Otherwise, one must be engaged in sense gratification, since one cannot live without engagement. Without Krishna consciousness, one must be always seeking self-centered or extended selfish activities. But a Krishna-conscious person can do everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thereby be perfectly detached from sense gratification. One who has no such realization must mechanically try to escape material desires before being elevated to the top rung of the yoga ladder. And that mechanically is key, because that's what the yoga, this yoga process we're going to hear is all about. Okay, you sit, you do it this way, you got to sit this way, and then breathe this way. Don't breathe too fast, low, eight times come out. Okay, I got it. And then, do this, don't do this. But in the process of doing that, you're not becoming more conscious of Krishna. And that means your desires are still like on hold. You haven't really purified them, And it's a constant battle to keep that under control. We have so many instances in the Bhagavatam of great yogis, Saubri Muni, and I think, was it Vishwamitra, I think, and they were advanced. How can you meditate underwater for 100 years, whatever it was, Saubri, But then he sees a fish copulating and it's all over. He can't control himself and he has to go out and get married. That's all we can say is it's pretty pathetic. Give me a break, In other words, he hadn't really expunged the real desire in the heart. It's still waiting there to explode into, Whereas devotees, think of Haridas Thakur. He's sitting in the middle of the night, and his young man, moonshine, and this young prostitute comes and shows her wares, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Couldn't move him at all. He was purifying her. She wasn't seducing him. So so he what was his yoga process? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I mean, he's namacharya, very high level. But the point is that what he's doing is what we're doing, but he's doing it perfectly. But even from the first process of doing it, we can also feel that if we're absorbed in Krishna consciousness. I always give the example because I've been here so many years. We used to go out every Friday without fail on Harinam. I think we started it Saturday in La Jolla, but we ended up Friday downtown here, the gas lamp district. And it's downtown, and people, and there's all these restaurants, and everything. But I especially remember on New Year's Eve, of course we couldn't do it this time. There'd be a huge kirtan. I mean, the people who come to the city once a year, they come downtown for New Year's night. They come from all over. So it's packed. The sidewalks are so packed with all kinds of people you don't know see. And I remember we're chanting. We're coming up to one corner, and there are these girls. I don't know if they were officially prostitutes or not, but they were really scantily dressed, practically unwatchable. And we're just chanting out. And it just, I felt sorry for them, because degrading the body, like that. But what I didn't feel was like, that I'm losing control or anything. You're absorbed in the holy name. You're dancing. There's so many devotees around. You're protected. You're protected. That's really the thing. And that's, it's not that I'm some great renunciant or something, but that's how this movement grew. Prabhupada comes down to the middle of the hippie era and the hippie heart in the Lower East Side. The other one is in San Francisco, which he also went to. And it's all free love and this and that, But he's finding people, young people who are looking for more than just some sensual thing. The LSD was like, in certain ways it's making them look for God, whatever. So they're open to it, and probably, in the system. And as soon as they start chanting, and the dancing, and and the feasting, which are on a material level also attractive, they get into it, and a certain percentage of them, not 100%, became serious devotees, and they became those who attracted others, and exponentially, actually grew that way. And it's all based, as I mentioned before. The Lord Chaitanya's movement is based on vairagya vidya, detachment and knowledge. This vairagya, which is often called renunciation, but it's more than that. It's dispassion. Even in the second chapter we hear raga of the Gita, raga dvesha vimuktais vishayanindriyaischa dhanatma vasha vidayatma prasadam adhigacchati. How to get the grace of the Lord, the prasadam of the Lord, not something you eat, but real grace, which is also prasadam. I mean, I'm not disparaging food prasadam, but this means the blessings of the Lord. So this verse is directly pertinent here, because Krishna starts out two verses before that, how we meditate. The conditions of this meditating, dhyan. He uses the word dhyan. This is the dhyana yoga chapter. Dhyayato vishayan pungsa. The conditioned soul meditates on the objects of the senses, vishayas. And from that meditation, attachment grows. And if you let it keep growing, it'll turn into kama, which is a real, powerful force of trying to enjoy. So dhyayato vishayan pungsa sangasteshu vijayate sangat sanjayate kama krodha vijayate. And inevitably, when your material desires are frustrated, you become angry. And if you can't express that anger, you become depressed. And all of these things are going on. Krodha bhavati sammoha. From that krodha, anger, you become completely bewildered. You can do things you would never do in your ordinary state. Sammoha smriti vibhrama. And in that bewildered state, you lose your memory, who you are, what you're supposed to do. Spriti brangshad buddhi nasho. And by losing that, your memory, the intelligence is destroyed and you're finished. So what's the solution? This verse, Raga dvesha vimuktais vishayan indriyais charan. If you're atma varsha vidhayatma, you're able to control yourself by practicing the regulative principles of freedom, which we've been given by Prabhupada, the process of coming down from Lord Chaitanya to Goswamis, the regulative principles of freedom, which sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. You accept these regulative principles voluntarily so that you can get free from the thrall, from the control of the material energy. So then, Raga Dvesha Vimuktais too, you can be free, Vimukta, of attraction and repulsion. There's two sides of it. Attraction and repulsion, you're free even though you're moving amongst the object of the senses. Haridas Thakur is, the prostitute is coming there, you're walking down Fifth Avenue in SanDiego on New Year's Eve, but there's no raga and there's no dvesha. Even though there's so many, it's a whole ocean of raga and dvesha, but it's not affecting you. Because you're practicing the regulative principles of freedom. And by practicing the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, sadhana bhakti, vaidhi bhakti, therefore you get the mercy of the Lord, the grace of the Lord, which comes in several forms. More attraction to Him and less attraction to Maya. And intelligence, gives you intelligence how you can come to Him, he says in Bhagavad Gita. So that's really what we're trying to achieve here. So, have renounced all material desires, you neither act for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. And Prabhupada will point out, a Krishna conscious person can do everything for the sadhana of Krishna, therefore be perfectly detached from sense gratification. So as long as we mold our life, the whole idea is to mold it more and more and more. So every little thing you do is part of this program of pleasing Krishna. Now I'm sweeping the floor for Krishna. I'm remembering it's for Him. Now I'm cooking for Krishna. Now I'm going out on Sankirtan. Now I'm chanting my rounds, everything. I'm doing Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. This is for your pleasure. So in this way you're always remembering Krishna. And if things that you're doing are in the program of Krishna consciousness, he says, yes, I'm confident this is for Krishna's pleasure. And you can really take pleasure in that. Okay, here we go. 5. This is an important verse. Urdhare atman atmanam natmanam avasariyet atma eva atmano bandhur atma eva diparatmanaha. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Purport: the word Atma denotes body, mind, and soul depending upon different circumstances or different contexts. In the yoga system, the mind and the conditioned soul are especially important. Since the mind is the central point of yoga practice, Atma refers here to the mind. The purpose of the yoga system is to control the mind and to draw it away from the attachment to sense objects. It is stressed herein that the mind must be so trained that it can deliver the conditioned soul from the mire of nescience. In material existence, one is subjected to the influence of the mind and the senses. In fact, the pure soul is entangled in the material world because the mind is involved with the false ego, which desires to lord it over material nature. Therefore, the mind should be trained so that it will not be attracted by the glitter of material nature. And in this way, the conditioned soul may be saved. One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. I'm going to read that one more time. Why don't I start the previous sentence? One should not degrade oneself by attraction to sense objects. The more one is attracted by sense objects, the more one becomes entangled in material existence. The best way to disentangle oneself is to always engage the mind in Krishna consciousness. The word hi is used for emphasizing this point, that is, that one must do it. It is also said, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayo bandhaya vishaya sango mukta nirvishayam manaha. Here's that word vishaya again. objects of the senses. For man, mind is the cause of bondage, and mind is the cause of liberation. Mind absorbed in sense objects is the cause of bondage, and mind detached from the sense objects is the cause of liberation. Amrita Bindu Upanishad 2. Therefore, the mind which is always engaged in Krishna consciousness is the cause of supreme liberation. And basically, we can experience this by the chanting of the holy name, chanting of Hare Krishna. Understanding how the name is non-different from Krishna, or in an even stronger way is Krishna. Simply by chanting and trying to hear. Admittedly, the mind is not perfectly controlled. Sometimes we're hearing better than other times. But still, to the degree that we're hearing the holy name, we're being attracted to Krishna, because it's not different from Krishna. We may not realize it, but you can feel that when you're absorbed in that, you're definitely not being, you're not being attracted by material objects. And in fact, just like this verse by Yamunacharya that's quoted twice in the purports here, Yadavadi Mamacheta Krishna Pararabindo, ever since I've been experiencing ever new mellows and serving the lotus feet of Nandanandana Krishna, then whenever I think of my experiences of sex life, I spit at the thought. It's not attractive, it's repulsive, That's a change of heart. So, we have to train the mind so that it's helping us. That the mind is naturally attracted to Krishna, remembering Krishna. This is why I love these verses, describing Krishna's form and pastimes and activity. They are just like a nice kirtan. Sometimes someone will walk in and will be attracted by the music, the drumming. And drumming is so important, The music itself is attractive. But of course, what's really important is that you get exposed to the name and hear the holy name. And for a devotee, we should be focused on that sound of the holy name, less on the music. But these verses are themselves aesthetic expressions, Like, I'll give you a sample. There are many samples, we're running out of time. Krishna's walking into the forest. It says in Vidagdha Madhava, and he's describing how the forest is pleasing him in so many ways. The forest is completely conscious, and it has its own gifts to give him, Sugandha makanda pakadamakadanda simadode vinisyande vandi katamanda pavrindam muhudidam kutando lanamando natabinanilais chandanagere mamanandam avrinda vipandamatulang tundilayati. It's such a work of art, it's a fine work of art, this verse. So, sugandho, the nice fragrance of the flower nectar oozing from the mango buds growing in the mango trees, is emitting a wonderful fragrance that's attracting swarms of bumblebees and turning them into vandis. A vandi is a professional praiser, is someone a bard, they call them, they can compose, they sing very nicely. So they're singing. What are they singing? They're singing the glories of Krishna. So these bees, so he's got the fragrance of that's pleasing him of the sap of these mango buds, and now the sound of the bees is very pleasing. They're singing songs glorifying Krishna. Vinisyande vandi kutnamadavavrindam mahodidam, and the breezes are cooling the atmosphere, blowing down from the Malaya hills, which are very fragrant with the Malaya fragrance, the sandalwood. So they're causing the tree twigs and the creepers and everything to sway very, very, very gracefully, Kritando lanamando natabinadalais chandanagere. And in this way, my bliss is being increased just by walking into this forest. Mamanandam vrinda vipandamatulang tundalayati. If you take the trouble to study that verse and chant it and learn it, and that's a way in which the mind can help you remember Krishna. So that's how it works. That's making your mind your friend, so that that it exalts you rather than degrades you. Okay, we'll pick up here tomorrow. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We have one more class. The mind as the friend or the enemy, depending on what we cultivate. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I'm sorry?